We are Greg and Leah, the host of Evolve, the #1 podcast about relationships, and not just the tender or toxic romantic ones, but all kinds of relationships with many people, places, and paths.
And we aren't here because we know or understand it all, simply because we are working to evolve and asking others to join the evolution.
So join us in this next episode of Evolve.
Okay, welcome back. We are part 2 with Samantha Hart, owner of Yoga Home. And I just want to say, too, as we dive back in here, I can't say this enough, how therapeutic this is to me as a mom of an adult son, of a child of, senior parents, and just, I don't know. I feel like everyone we get to talk to, I'm sure you can say yay or nay yourself too, Gregory, but I don't know, it heals something in us every time. So this is exactly the point of why Evolve exists, because it's helping us evolve out of some of those hurts, those traumas, those pains, but it's also helping us evolve into our responsibility of what is our role, what is our part in all the relationships. Evolve is about all relationships. We talk about money and pets and food, but it's what is our responsibility in all these relationships. But you're bringing in points, and I guess every guest kind of does, but points of view that I've never thought of or never considered. And I love that there are people out here doing so much work on themselves that the way you said it in the first part was when we take that space for us, it automatically, I'm using my words now, but it ripples out and benefits everyone around us. Right. So I am very much a very selfish person in that way. Mm-hmm. And I think I have been most of my life. I've always taken a lot of space for me, but not in always the right ways. So I love how you're talking about making that space for you, being selfish in those ways that count, that matter, because it does affect the world and the relationships around us. Before we dive too deep into this second episode, I have a quick commercial here sponsored by myslc.org. Have you ever felt lost in your journey, unsure of your next steps, or perhaps you're seeking deeper connections with your loved ones, or navigating challenges of adulthood? That's where a life coach can make all the difference. Hi, I'm Leah, who you already know, but did you know I specialize in empowering individuals, families, and youth to discover their strengths, set meaningful goals, and create a supportive path forward? Whether you're a parent wanting to connect more deeply to your child, a young adult transitioning into independence, or someone looking to unleash your creativity, I am here to guide you through that all. Together, we can explore your unique journey and develop personalized strategies that resonate with you. So don't wait any longer to unlock your potential. Reach out today at myslc.org and let's take that first step toward a more fulfilling life. myslc.org. And now back to our guest, Samantha, to hear the more amazing, powerful, enlightening things she's got to share.
Well, and one of the things that I try to work on, just using the word selfish, one of the things that I try to deconstruct or unpack also too is the way that society puts negative connotation on certain words. So like the word selfish, right? We've been taught that the word selfish means that it's self-absorbed, but it doesn't have to. Selfishness needs to be something for myself, to take care of myself so that I am productive and so that I can show up in love. If we don't have a sense of selfishness, then we're giving from a place of depletion, and that's not okay either, right? So just the whole word selfish, I think we need to just kind of revisit. Yeah, exactly. Redefine. Yeah. There's a bunch of words that I have that I always bring to my classes, and they're like, oh shit, here she goes.
Man, we're supposed to just be stretching, and now I have to think over here. Yeah. So what are your classes like? Let's talk about that a little bit, since we've not got to experience one yet. What will people experience in your classes?
So so in the idea of self-autonomy, first of all, my classes usually have a little mingle time in the beginning. I try to be honest about how life shows up and how the philosophy kind of can work for people, so that people aren't just showing up thinking that they need to strive for something. They can see how batshit crazy I am, how human I am, and how I use these tools in my daily life. For example, my youngest kiddo stuck his hand in a fryer yesterday and got second-degree burns across his entire hand. Yeah, it was horrific. But how did I use the philosophy of yoga when I was with him yesterday to help calm him down, to remind him of, the things are showing up the way that it is, that we can go with the flow. It doesn't mean you're stupid. We don't have to get into the mind stuff about it. And that it's just, part of the play right now. And so anyway, bringing that stuff in, and then we have these great conversations about how yoga shows up off the mat. And then we'll do some really simple movements. We don't really do anything that's too extreme. And I constantly am asking my people to be curious about what is going on in your body so that it's not posture driven. I don't care if you get into your down dog. However, if you get into your down dog like this, how does that feel? You know, I'm an alignment based teacher, and there's a whole thing when it comes to alignment now, but you know, how can I be in a posture where I am not trying to better myself? And can I just, in the posture, admit that I'm perfect? And then they get a nice juicy shavasana, yeah.
A nice juicy savasana.
Sometimes-
And I do like how you said that you talk about yoga off the mat.
Yeah.
How does that show up for
Yes.
us?
Yeah.
Because, if we're doing any kind of practice, even a religious practice, you're going to church, how is that showing up off the pew?
Exactly.
How is this stuff showing up in real everyday life?
Exactly.
And for most of us, it just wasn't or isn't.
Yeah.
That it's just, this is my Sunday, Wednesday,
Exactly.
self, or my class self, or my church self. But that doesn't, come up in real everyday
We have
life.
a relationship with ourselves, just like we have a relationship with our family.
Sure.
It's guilt driven.
Sure.
I mean, how much of
it's a
our
good point.
family relationships we're taught to have that same, so we do the same shit to them as we do to ourselves.
Yeah.
We treat ourselves the same way, and so it's no
Well,
wonder-
we said this yesterday. You can only love outwardly as much as you love inwardly.
Yeah.
So if you're very limited of how much you can love yourself, you're very limited, and more so of how much you're giving out.
So I agree with that. And also, just to kind of go back to the whole, like me, my kid taught me how to love.
Right.
So, but I agree, like how I expressed it,
Yeah.
comes from that place of how you feel about yourself internally. But yeah, it's all learning. Like it's all educational. And if we stop putting emotion on it, we don't have to do anything from a place of shame and guilt. Like everything then just becomes data of a story. I don't have to make it mean something about me.
So how would you tell someone, and whether maybe you even do this in your class, like to remove yourself from that equation so that you can have that experience
I
without
like
the
to-
emotion?
I like to use a story. I'm like, if I'm driving a car, first of all, I've dealt with road rage. I call it more now road frustration.
Why do I feel like we're getting a lot of people who are a lot like you?
It's more like road frustration at this point. But I have dealt with road rage and had some instances where that were kind of scary and not okay. So I think about like, that bitch just cut me off.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I have made that situation mean something about me, right? Mm-hmm. I have taken it personal, and therefore that person now is like, we're in conflict. That bitch cut me off, right?
Yeah.
And you can feel it. There's so much energy just in that statement.
I mean, have you ever felt like that, Gregory, or what? No, just kidding. We were just talking about this.
Yeah. And wait,
How come people that go faster than you are dickheads, and everybody goes slower than you is assholes?
yeah. exactly.
Yeah, road rage was a
Yeah,
serious
road rage
one
is a
over
thing.
here.
Oh gosh, we could talk all day about
But
that.
yeah, I love that you're saying like we're making everything personal.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if I just look at the data, instead of looking at the emotions, and I just look at the data, that person put their car in front of mine. There's nothing to be upset about there. Right? It's when we take it personal, when we've decided that it means something about us, is when the emotions become conflated and they become big. And sometimes when those emotions get so big, we can't regulate them anymore.
Yeah.
So this is how yoga taught me road rage.
Wait, what?
No, I'm serious. I just realized that as she mentioned it, because we talked earlier about this is the mat that you live in. You cannot live outside this mat. Here's your mat. And you cannot be at fault. This is a whole way it taught me about being, I can't stand being in line unless I'm first.
Okay.
I love it. Honestly.
But in a grocery store, what the fuck are you? Oh, I can hurry up, but they're in their mat doing their thing. I can't go to their mat.
Right.
They're in their space.
Right.
I have to spend time in my own space.
Right.
So if they cut me off, that's bullshit. They were there first.
Right.
There's no two atoms can't occupy the same goddamn space. There's an explosion if that happens. And so if you're a crowded room, here's your mat. Maybe sometimes your mat might get cut a little in half because of the crowd. But there's your mat.
See, and I find this so funny because we're so the opposite. He was a color in the lines. I was like, let's explore everything and everything questioned. And yes, that's part.
I was that in the very beginning of my life.
Right, but you were taught
and
to
put
not
down
do that.
I had to navigate different
Lines.
operating, so even operate in this world I had, in my world, I should say, because my world was such a strict, whatever.
Rule driven.
But anyway, I'm good with boundaries, and if I knew my mat, then I'm okay.
See,
And
yeah.
it helps
See, and I
me.
didn't have any boundaries. I've had to learn to put them in place. So, I mean, it's been a good seesaw balance for our relationship because he's very boundary driven, very rules driven, and I'm exactly the opposite. I had no boundaries, didn't like rules. So we've had to meet in the middle at different times, and sometimes it's like we talked about when we first met, like that seesaw that it's never a complete straight balance.
Right.
It's always up or down, but there's always one party that can pull the other to the center for themselves.
Yes.
But yeah, to me, yoga mats are just a suggestion. That's why I love Kat's class here, where it's like, let's come across the room, yay! Like I am like spreading out across the room. So like in
It's
it,
just a suggestion when it comes to rules or speed limits. So.
well, again, we're back to road rage. There was a question I wanted to ask, just going back to how you like your classes and how you're not asking, but just sharing with your students of like, hey, this is how we can show up and stuff. What is their typical feedback? Do they come in, like I know you said in the beginning, like sometimes they come in a little bit judgy because they're like, oh my gosh, they're looking at you physically and they're like, oh, well, this is not the class for me because I'm an Instagram influencer with this great body and like, oh my God, I thought this was going to be so much cooler.
Yeah.
What are people taking away? And have you got to hear like their feedback and their life, alterations?
I'm pretty fortunate about like how. So I've taught yoga in Colorado Springs since 2011, and so I have practitioners that have practiced with me still since 2011.
Oh, nice.
And so not only do they get to hear me talk, which sometimes whatever, but they also get to see the growth because I'm honest about it.
Yeah,
so I don't show up in any of these conversations and try to be better than. I admit my vices, I admit my problems, I admit my road rage, I admit my anger issues. Like I admit my humanity so that they also have the opportunity to step into their humanity. And it's so great.
So you create this space of trust and safety
exactly
in the
so
class.
And I will have people that will be like, thank you for saying that because I was dealing with this over here. And it's a reminder that I am perfect. I had a student just post something online yesterday that she has been struggling because she's going through a whole bunch of life changes. And she's like, because of Samantha, that's not what she said verbatim, but it is. But she said, because of this, because of my session with my teacher, I have gotten to step back and realize that I'm just in this change and this can be perfect too.
Yeah.
And I call people out. Like I call my students out when they're like, I'm just fighting to surrender. And I'm like, hold on, stop. Let's just listen to what you said. You're fighting to surrender. Like
There's an oxymoron here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's just sit with like, what is it really? Like, who are you really? And so I actually will demand that people start to sit in on their own shit. No, you don't get to pull your less than stuff here. Absolutely not.
Right.
And so teaching teachers, right, is a thing. We get to be pretty intimate for 10 months. Our program is 10 months long. We get to be pretty intimate for 10 months. And I'm like, no, see, you're bullshitting.
Yeah.
And what happens if you stop bullshitting and you actually step into it? What would happen? Why is it scary?
Yeah.
And so the Svadhyaya, that self-study, right? And I'm just pointing out blind spots. Let's not get it twisted. I'm no guru, right? I'm not here. I'm not enlightened myself. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm better than. But like, for example, I had a woman that came to me and she was like, oh, I'm so, now that I'm, sober and da-da-da, I'm like, but hold on. Your alcoholic self was just as perfect as you are. Now you can acknowledge all the work that you've done because that's amazing
celebrate
stuff.
that. Yeah.
But the fact that you're demonizing your alcoholic self is also an issue because you were just as perfect there. It's just that the universe had decided in that moment you would be an alcoholic and in this moment you're not.
I think that's really hard for a lot of us is to feel perfect in wherever we're at right now.
Sure.
One of our first, I'm not even sure how his ego got so big. Like,
I said, I'm sorry to myself. It was
I'm good. Well, and that used to be like, this is so off topic now, but like that used to be some of our fights. He would just like throw out words. And I actually did an illustration because we used to be youth pastors and like we had a lot of visual illustrations. And like one of them I said, like I grabbed all my son's like swords that he had. And I was like, every time you talk, it's like you do that. And apologies are pulling the sword out, but I am bleeding. and you're like, I pulled the sword out. What the hell's the
Yes.
problem?
Love
And that
that.
would be so
Love
hard for us. And I think that was a really good conversation we had the day that I said, like, dude, your sorries are not what I need.
Yeah.
It's
What
a
I need
start,
is I need you
but
to stop and think
Yeah.
before you throw the sword.
yeah, before the sword.
Yeah.
But if you can't, let's have a discussion why you're helping me heal.
Exactly.
Not just pulling out the sword and saying, what the hell is your problem? Why are we still
Exactly.
dealing with this? Because I'm
love it.
bleeding. So that was a huge, like, pivotal part for us.
Yeah, if you show me a picture or something, I get it.
Yeah.
To see it.
But like one of our first books, that's what I was just gonna say, is one of the first books that started some of our process was the Don Ruiz, the 4 Agreements.
Oh, yeah.
And like I think
Yeah.
it's the last agreement, like do your best, and then everything you do is your best. That never
Everything-
settled with me.
yeah.
Like I couldn't settle with that. I'm like, that can't be true.
You've always
You
done your
know
best.
you're not doing your best sometimes. Like I can't grasp this. But like I like how you're kind of saying it here is
Even when you know you're not doing the best, you're still empowered in the choice. And so, you know,
it's just like to wrap your head around it when you know like good versus bad, or I had a good choice and I made the bad one on purpose, or I thought I was doing it for this, whatever reason. That was the hardest chapter for me. I was like, and he like absorbed it immediately. He was like, oh yeah, absolutely, I agree, everything I've ever done. I'm like, man, I'm really struggling with this one because like I don't feel like
But
you've done your best every moment of your life.
A recipe that you're putting together to make a stew or a soup or a chili. Yeah, you throw all this stuff, and if you were to take that recipe, and I mean, I cook chili different every single time.
Right.
Every time.
yeah,
Every time. But yet everybody loves the chili.
always great.
But if you were to take the chili 5 minutes into it, it would be no good.
Right.
What do you mean?
I put
What is
all
that?
the ingredients in, and I haven't stirred it up, or I haven't done anything.
Oh, it
to
hasn't like
So
simmered
that's-
and
It has to cook. It has to simmer. It has to produce time
right.
in order to have.
And that's where I guess like I think
Making
I'm
chili after you cook it and put it away, and then bring it back out is even better. I mean,
I think I'm getting better about looking back and being like, okay, that was my best with
It
the
was
information I
best,
had, with all
that
these
was
things.
just an ingredient
Exactly.
that you had to add in to get you to here.
And like sometimes you have to practice, right? Like, I talk to the students a lot about like when you're practicing being a good person, you open the door for somebody. But then there's the expectation on the return, and so if they don't say thank you, all of a sudden you're offended.
Oh, yeah,
and,
yeah,
right?
Why
We
did I
all
do
know
that?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just slam, push them back in.
Next
and
time,
slam it,
watch. Yeah.
right? And then it's like,
Just
but
cut me off.
yeah, exactly. You're making me something. And then eventually you just get to the point where you open the door because opening the door is who you are.
It's the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes sense that like, if at first I feel like the only way I can get my needs met is by stealing money, and I know that stealing is wrong, but it's the only way that I can get my needs met, and there's $5 laying there right now and he doesn't realize he dropped it. The best that I can do right now is steal the money.
Right.
Right, and I'm still perfect there, and we can get into a whole bunch of like spiritual bypassing, which I don't want to get into. So I have a very slippery slope here that I also address in classes. But eventually, you're going to be like, no, my needs are met. That is his money. I'm not going to steal it. Then eventually, you're just like, hey, bro, you dropped your $5.
Right.
It's not
Right.
even a thought anymore because it just becomes who you are.
Yeah.
So, we're learning how to live, right? And how we are taught in our first couple of years. I mean, that's gonna affect everything else,
Absolutely.
right? So if you stole to get your needs met, then that's a whole thing. I always like
Well,
talk about
practicing to improve is different from just not doing anything.
Right.
I mean, a skateboarder goes to the skate park to practice to
Right,
land
right,
that hit.
right.
Land that hit.
But then if you were the person who had to steal to get your needs met, like who is that person? Like how sad, and can we have compassion for the fact that that beat up, sad, like abused person feels they need to steal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
It's the Indian
Well-
proverb. It's walk a mile in their proverb.
Exactly.
In their moccasins.
yeah,
before
and
you get
that's
judged.
holding space for yourself when you're like I hate the fact that I treated my kids the way that I did for so long, and I hate the fact that it took so long for me to get to this other side. I'm a grandmom now,
Yeah.
and I wish nothing more than to be able to start over and do it all over again, but I can't.
Right.
Right? But I was 16. I would never put all of that expectation on any other 16-year-old.
Yeah.
So I can soften.
So
a
you
little
can
bit.
give yourself that grace
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just part of that seesaw balance again, for me anyways, I'm saying, of just like how much grace do I give myself versus how much shame or guilt, like
All
of
of it.
constantly, you know, of that like, oh no, I need to feel, because sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes we like feel like we want the shame and guilt in our life too.
Because we like to be
We
victims.
wave it as a banner.
We like to be victims. We like
Yeah.
to be victims of the world, and we like to be victims of ourselves.
Because
And
bad
that
news produces likes and hits,
And that's the
gets
suffering.
everybody to join in and come in and say
pity parties, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and that's where all of this, like truly all of the self-evaluation and self-accountability and everything really comes into play. And like I said earlier, really requires a lot of emotional maturity.
Yeah.
And I think like going back to the guilt and shame and putting a lot on yourself and burdening yourself with those narratives isn't an overnight thing that like, oh, I never feel that.
Right.
It's one thing at a time.
It's like you said, can I stop fucking healing?
Yeah, I said that the other day. Yeah, like, I need a break.
Time to go play again.
There's no such thing as closure, because also too, like who I am digesting this experience as 42-year-old Samantha is going to be different than who I am at 65-year-old Samantha digesting the same experience, right?
Yeah.
And so like trying to give yourself a lot of like freedom to be honest with it, however it shows up when it does.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's times when I'm like, okay, I feel good about like where I've come, and like I can give myself a lot of props, and like I'm doing well. And then there's other times I just like want to lock myself in the room and cry over.
Yeah. Like, I can't believe how
past
far we have
mistakes.
to go.
Yeah. And sometimes I just want to feel guilty.
Yeah.
Right? And that's okay too, because that guilt has also given me a sense of wanting to change and be better.
Inspiration.
But I
leads
don't
to that,
live in guilt
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't make guilt and shame necessarily wrong.
Right.
Well, necessarily is not what I should say. I don't make shame and guilt wrong, but I don't live there anymore.
Sure.
Sometimes they're like necessary to just, well, first of all, I don't live in shame. Obviously, I'm way too fucking vulnerable for that shit. But
Yeah.
I try to, sometimes that guilt is just a nice reminder that I still have growth to do moving forward.
Sure.
Well, I think we started out the talk with it's okay to have an emotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anger, there are emotions.
All of them.
They're
Yeah,
all
all of
emotions.
those,
Okay. And we teach, I've been taught, it's not okay to be mad. It's
Right.
not okay to be
Right.
sad. You got to change that quickly.
Right.
And so you don't even process
Right.
the anger. Why was I angry? Because I
Right.
wasn't allowed to ask why.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And I can't say I don't know. So.
But I will say this, and like going kind of pulling in the yoga and the movement a little bit. I was recently at a retreat with my class, and we did what was it, like a yoga class? I guess. I guess it was a yoga class. And I didn't expect it was the style of yoga where you hold the poses for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know the name of it. I don't remember, but like instead of flowing yoga, it was hold.
Yeah.
And I did not expect for like stuff to come up, and like I was not okay. Like it really had a very somatic effect on me.
Yeah.
So like talking about what you're saying there, where even as kids we learn, and you mentioned your son, like you learn these coping mechanisms. And it's sad because what we're doing to our bodies is pushing those
Pushing it down.
emotions
Yes.
in.
Yes.
So like when I had this experience with this yoga class with my instructors and all my classmates, like I was not okay after. Like I fell apart, and I didn't know what to do with all this
Right.
stuff because I had
Right.
spent so much of my childhood like, don't show sad, don't be this, just be a wallflower, just be what did Rebecca call it yesterday, like the glass child. Like just don't cause
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So in that, like I said, I learned not to use my voice. I learned not to take up too much space, to need too much, to ask anything. But all that went in here. All those needs and feelings and emotions and stuff went in here. So like as you start working through, and this is why a lot of people will run the other way from healing, because it does hurt to pull up some of that stuff.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It is very
Healing
difficult.
hurts, man.
Yeah, I mean, and I know like we had, I had someone a family member who gotten hurt one time, something crashed on their legs. So if the outside of your skin heals first before the inside, you'll end up with a really bad, nasty infection. Like it has to heal from the inside out. And how many times in society are we just band-aiding? We were just saying this today with something that was on the news. We're constantly band-aiding stuff. We're never really asking, why did this happen?
Yeah.
Let's get back. We talked about it yesterday with our other guests, like to the root of the problem. Let's stop observing all the leaves and saying that's the
Right.
reason. No. There's a root to
Right.
this.
So my teacher likes to talk about the body. She says that the body is the silent communicator of the spirit. And so in yoga, every part of your body has a particular emotion that's attached to it, and it all goes back to esoteric anatomy as well. So the whole chakra system in the West is all about rainbows and like,
Yeah.
but in the East, it actually is like much deeper than that, which is the source of where it came from in the first place. Anyway, sometimes I sound really shitty, but whatever.
No,
Okay.
don't.
But everything has like a particular purpose and meaning to it. And so like, going back to like hitting the leg, like why are you terrified to step forward in your life? Like with my kiddo yesterday, why do you feel like you can't reach? There has to be something about him not feeling like he can reach out for help. And so you cut off that ability to reach out, right? So the body is a silent communicator of the spirit, and we can talk about that from injuries, right? Just like that. But also too, like I stuff stuff down, so now my intestines are inflamed, and
Absolutely.
I don't digest food well. Because it all, Ayurveda, it's all about just digestion. Digesting the food that you intake, or anything that you intake, the music you intake, the experiences that you intake, and then can you properly let them go? Can they be digested and accumulated and let go? And if not, then it's going to create congestion somewhere in the body, and that congestion is eventually going to relate to disease. And so, like somatic wise, we store stuff in the body. And when we start to move the body, some of those experiences come up for us to
be stirred up.
Exactly. And that's why somatics is so healing. Somatic practices, movement in general can be so healing. Have you guys watched the TV show The Great?
Yes.
It's great, isn't it?
Wait, which one is The Great?
Yeah,
Is that with the Queen?
Russian?
Yes,
Peter.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my favorite.
That was deep and intense, and also funny, and
my favorite part of the whole thing. My favorite part about that show was the end when she started dancing, because that dance was like completely uninhibited. She just got to like show up and just start like, and you could tell at first she's practicing her moves, right? And then she gets crazy and intense into it, and then by the end of it, she's sobbing. Because everything that she had gone through that series, she got to express in that like 2 minutes of her dancing. And it was my favorite part of the whole show. So somatics have a really good way of helping us, if the body is data, right? It can also tell me about the experiences that I'm holding on to that I don't need to.
So do you have your students do a lot of movement in your classes, or not really?
So my classes are a lot more functional based, honestly. I have a lot of older people who take my class who I love so much, and my whole entire purpose is to try to keep everybody mobile so that when they go and they take other yoga classes, they have a sense of safety.
Okay.
So we talk about the philosophy a lot, but we don't do a lot of somatic healing or anything like that in my classes.
But you know a lot about it. So I want to ask you, like, what is, we've talked a lot about, like, what you want people to know from your journey so far. What is a key takeaway that you would love to throw out here?
Gosh, that, like, your journey is perfect, even sometimes when it doesn't feel like it is. Like, if we go back to the idea that everything is perfect, whole, and complete, like, you are too. And so you don't have to live in guilt and shame in order to make positive changes. You just have to take self-ownership for yourself.
Yeah, I think once you start doing that, you start giving other people the space that they're perfect too.
Exactly. That self-autonomy.
Yeah.
And then now having the little bean, right? Holding that space for her, and then like educating forward. We have the power to create, like, to change the world. We really have the power to change the world.
Every next generation is the next,
And
next
so,
chance,
I'm
opportunity.
curious, and I know this sounds crazy because it's my own personal question of how I would parent as this new way of thinking. When they go out in public and they act crazy. And they are embarrassing. And they could get hurt. I'm just so I would have to unprogram a whole lot there. I see, because I'm not the one to put a kid on a leash.
Right.
But we did, because our son was a little bit dangerous.
I was so against that, but we did, because he almost got run over by a car in a parking lot. So it's like,
what's the balance
What's
there?
the balance?
They still have to show up. Yes, they still have to show up in life, right? We still have to teach them how to be functioning and productive people in society.
More, or not not a moral code, but a societal
Yeah, totally.
code that we have to all live by.
Sure.
For whatever, we can't just go out in public and naked or something.
So one of the things,
Number 3.
I think if I were to do it over again, instead of being like, shut up, you're embarrassing me,
Right.
like be like, oh, you're having an emotional episode. I'm going to take you outside. I'm going to let you have those emotions. You know, we can talk about how we can handle it better, going back into the store if we need to, or if I need to go home.
And so so now, and I just pinpointed my issue. You said own it. Me is, what is everybody thinking?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the meaning making, right? It's
I
got to mean
have
something
been,
about
I
me.
have been that person.
Yeah.
Get a grip on that fucking kid. You know,
Yeah, exactly. Care about, right? Yeah, so you stop making the experience mean something about you, right?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if it got this, but the brilliant part about that is that it's the both sides. So then you recognize I'm, raising these kids to not care what other people think about them because they don't have to make it mean something about them, but that at the same time, you start recognizing where you start making it mean about other people, making things mean something about other people as well. Yeah.
And that's, again, I keep going back to this, but like that emotional maturity part, it takes a lot of discipline on your own part of being, like, instead of being the victim, being the observer. And you said it as a little bit different of a way than I'm saying it right now. But, we spend a lot of our life just taking everything personal. And I heard it said really well one time long ago, or reading it somewhere, like, we're born into this world that everything is about us. So as soon as I cry, I get this. As soon as and which isn't, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's the only way we can communicate. But we learn the message of, when I do this, I get that.
Exactly.
Or, I say this and everything's
It's the
about me.
conditioning,
It's all
exactly.
about me. I mean, how many little kids who, if you come from a divorce home like I did, like, they all immediately will think it was something to do with them.
Yeah.
Like, we all think it's
Right.
about us. Everything
Right.
is about us, when that's just not the case. So it takes a lot of unlearning, unprogramming, to get yourself to this space,
Yeah.
because it's a lot of work.
It's
It's a lot of work to
lot
be
of
the
work.
observer, not the emotional responder.
Yeah.
To every and anything in your life. That everything is not all about you. So it's a lot of work. Yeah. And I like that you said there's never, how did you say, like, there's never closure?
Oh yeah,
on
there's no
stuff,
such thing
because,
as closure.
like,
Because who you are processing in this situation now is going to be who you, totally
like,
different than
so
who you're
different.
processing
And I like
later.
that, because it gives a lot of permission to just keep going,
And if it
just
needs to come
relax.
up again, it needs to come up again.
Well, and there's a lot of guilt for it coming up again. Like, I thought we dealt with
Yeah,
this.
well, see,
I
that's
felt that a
exactly-
lot.
And that's how I am with my kids. Like,
Yeah.
right now you say that you're healed and it's okay, but if you decide in 10 years that that's not the case, we
Right.
can still have this conversation. We can
Yeah.
go over it
Yeah.
again.
We can talk about this again.
We can, unpack it from a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, because I don't want it to be like, oh, well, we already did this. Like, no, like, I need to do it differently now. Like, I have new
Well, and I feel
information.
like that might be something that, like, came up in my narrative in our family, was like, why are we still talking about this?
Yeah.
And it shuts you down.
Exactly.
Like, you don't move any further. So it's really great to be on either side of that. Don't be the one saying that.
Right.
Why are we still talking about this? And don't be the one that's hearing that. And hopefully, that, and if you do, you can learn to self-regulate, to be like,
Exactly.
okay, that's their problem. That's their choice, that how they're unpacking and processing it, but I can still move forward and process this.
And sometimes I needs. If she's incapable, she's just incapable. But where can I take care of myself and do that
How
processing
many
for myself?
generations of people have like our parents that have not done anything?
Right.
I mean, I know of generations. I know friends that they just don't take. They're so agreeable. They don't take responsibility for anything.
Right.
They just agree with whatever. I mean,
Because they just love you and they're just trying to do what's
right.
best for you.
The grandma
Yeah.
effect.
Right.
But I also feel like there is a narrative of some of the older generations too, of like, well, no one helped me with this, so I don't have to help you.
Yes.
And obviously just get over it,
Right.
is
Get
a lot
over
of
it.
that narrative.
Stop being a
Yeah.
snowflake.
Yeah.
Don't have emotions.
Right.
Yeah. But that it brings up like the hope, like you said before, like of changing the generations. Like we have the power of changing the generations, and the generations will change the world, right?
And I love that you're doing this with your next generation. I mean, I can't wait for my son to have grandkids, have babies, and I'm like, I want to do everything so different,
You said
but
something I don't know if it has anything to do with what we said, but you said something when we talked over at the coffee house the other day about definition of being enlightened. You said, because you said you weren't
Oh, it's
enlightened.
100% self-acceptance.
Right.
Yeah,
And-
that's what I believe.
Yeah, I I just, when you said that, it's like,
Yeah.
so a great analogy of just, you're enlightened because you just accept yourself.
Exactly as
And
it
you
is.
accept that, that's true love there.
Yeah, exactly.
And you
as
accept
it is.
yourself and you accept others.
100%. 100% self-love,
Yeah.
100% self-acceptance. And from that place, 100% self-taught me. And if I'm holding the space for self-autonomy, then I can't be, like, it moves you out of hypocriticalness on how you would act forward. I can't sit here and demand my self-autonomy and turn around and scream in my kid's face. Right?
I do feel like that is another lesson and another layer that has to happen, because I do think that as humans we do expect more from others sometimes than ourselves. So this is another layer of
the hypocrisy of exactly.
Yeah.
I had a whole self-autonomy thing come up the other day with my teacher trainings, because, a couple people called off, they had life, things showed up, whatever. And I came in and I was like, I don't get to call off. Mm-hmm. I don't get to not show up. I'm expected to be here every single time. Yeah. So just remember that, right? And so one of the girls, one of my students was like, I just want you to know that I'm taking this seriously and I'm sorry. And I was like, oh shit, it's a nice reminder to let us all know that we have, that we're showing up for something that we're committed to. But I can't be mad if somebody is taking care of themselves.
Right.
And therefore is an inconvenience to me. Mm-hmm. That's hypocritical. So I have to hold my self-autonomy and then work on my own emotions when other people are holding theirs.
Well, we talked about this, I think, yesterday, maybe, when we were doing another recording about how, in his life, especially since I didn't really care about the rules, but, he was just like, if I got to follow the rules, you have to follow the rules. Yeah. And then you become, this dictator, or not even dictator, what would be the word?
Policeman.
Yeah, let me make sure everyone's doing the rules so that they are doing their job, so I don't get in trouble, and so we all equally are fair.
Around you.
This goes all the way back to the whole idea that yoga asks you to give up power, right? Because I'm trying to have control in the situation, so I'm trying to make sure that my feelings that I don't have to work on controlling my own emotions. So therefore, I'm going to tell you that you have to come to appease me, right? And we do that with kids. Yeah, that's exactly. They are the most marginalized, abused groups in the whole entire world, because they have no power.
Oh yeah, it's complete. Yeah,
the power differential is 100% to zero.
The school system doesn't help that.
Well, no, totally.
Sit still, listen, memorize, get this right,
Completely.
move on.
It's a regimen. Everybody's uniform, and now they've been giving them uniforms. They can't even have any
expression, self-expression,
self at all.
So exactly. It goes back to this, and its power. How do I keep control? Because I need to feel power, because I don't feel that for myself.
Yeah. And that's a great value. I think a step back and a first question to always ask is, what am I trying to control here?
Exactly.
We've talked a lot about this in many episodes, but just what do you have control over? You.
Yeah.
You have control over you and your choices.
Yeah.
So stop trying to control the students, the child, everybody around you, because you're using the word power like we've used the word control, like having control over things.
And my job as a mother was to raise functioning, hopefully balanced humans to live in a life that's hard. So and eventually, that phrase that got me a long time ago, they're on loan. What relationship do I want to have with my kids when they're gone? Yeah.
And I love that ending, as that thought, as an end thought here, because we all have adult kids, and we are adults kids to our parents, and not yet have the best relationship there. Right. And then, like you said with your mom too, it's just, a lot of it is, what relationships did we have before we left home? And those affect now.
In order to go any growth, we have to accept what is now. And
Exactly.
I think some of the things I talked about yesterday this is where our relationship is now, and I have to accept that. Yeah. Whether I like it or whether I don't.
Right.
Which is not always easy, but
right.
But Samantha, I want to say thank you for coming on here, coming way outside of your comfort zone. I feel like you just flow very naturally. This didn't even seem like it was an effort at all for you. I hope that you felt comfortable. It felt very natural. But what is a way that anyone can support you, find you, if they're local, that they can start attending classes?
Yeah. So we teach out of Sunwater Spa in Manitou. You can check out our classes at Yoga Home COS. Nope, that's my email. Yeah, yogahomecos.com. Yeah,
Oh, it is, okay.
yogahomecos.com. I
.com.
was like, oh
Okay.
my God,
And I'll make sure that link is in the description as well, so people can just click there. You don't have to remember it all. But thank you so much for doing this.
And also in support, I take all support in forms of compliments, coffee, and cash. So.
Oh, I like that. Triple C.
Yeah, I like it.
Compliments, coffee, and cash. But yeah, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to throw out before?
I appreciate the.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, for having such a good convo.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, until next time, everyone,
Be evolving.
be evolving.